Oh, hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Burn Desire Show. Today we have Julia Taylor. I can't pronounce that incorrectly, surely, can I?
Oh, no, that's great.
Yeah. Sometimes I have guests and it's like, you're not quite sure, but your name's pretty straightforward, so we're all good.
Yes.
We've had a quick kind of chat beforehand, and I've, as I usually do, kind of looked into your background, which is like super interesting. I kind of like to start generally with like education and like try and figure out if that, I love the Steve Jobs quote, which is you can't connect the dots going forwards, only backwards. Right. So like if you look at yourself where you are right now, like I'm sure you can figure out like how the things we're going to come on to, like the year and a half in the RV, et cetera, led on to where you're on now. But I'm sure when you were in that RV, you didn't exactly anticipate being where you're on now. Is that correct?
Yep. Oh, yes, absolutely.
Good. So educationally, you kind of, what I found anyway is you had the business management degree. Is that the first thing you did, like your undergraduate, if that makes sense?
Yeah. So my undergraduate, I went to the University of Georgia, and gosh, I don't even want to say how long ago, but I got a degree in like international affairs and Russian. And my, I guess, minor was in Russian language, and that kind of was one of the reasons why I don't even think this is anywhere like in my bio anywhere, but I lived in Russia for a year on a U.S. government grant.
Oh, wow.
And as part of that, like me going to Russia. No. Even if I was, I wouldn't say.
Exactly.
So I was there for a year learning the language. And then as part of that, like them paying for me to go there, I then needed to work for the government. And that was helpful for my end to then start working for the Department of Defense in intelligence work.
So see, why did you minor in Russian? Like, did you have a particular interest in Russian? Like it's an unusual thing to take an interest in, I would suggest, maybe.
Yeah, it was it's a little bit embarrassing to say, but I wanted to have a language because of the degree that I was doing. And I wanted to do something different. Almost everyone did Spanish. I thought I'll do something different. And the university that I was at had this way that you could go in and take a look to see what instructors, what lecturers, professors gave really good grades and how well overall people did. And Russian was like almost everyone got A's, and I was like, right, that's going to help my GPA, so I'll do that. So no, it was nothing strategic. It was how can I get some easy A's and improve my my GPA.
Fair. Now, look, it is what it is. And so where did you live in Russia? Like, can you tell us a bit about that experience, how that compares to the US?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it was cold as everything. It was cold. It was dark. Everything you imagine. It was an amazing experience. It was very hard. To the people are amazing once you get to know them, but on the surface, like what you see in Hollywood is kind of amusing because they can be quite kind of rough and gruff and cold, like just immediately on the surface. But once you get to know them, they would do anything for you, even if you just met in the bar, for example, which happened a lot. So we traveled a ton. We went super far north. We went all over Eastern Europe. We went pretty far west. So I lived in St. Petersburg. So we would go down to Moscow occasionally, and I was there just to learn the language and to kind of immerse myself in the culture. And that was 2005, 2006 when I was there. And like I said, it was so cold, but a phenomenal experience.
So were you at a kind of, what do you call it? I can't think of the word, but a reciprocal university out there, or were you actually have a job? Like what was your actual kind of day to day?
Sure. I was at a university in St. Petersburg, and it was kind of just to learn a group of Americans. Yes, we were all Americans that were on this kind of exchange program, but it wasn't an exchange in the sense that Russians then came to us. It was more just we were on this
Okay.
Government funded kind of program to learn the language. A lot of I'm trying to think, some of the other folks one of my best friends, she now works in kind of US development, like kind of US aid sort of stuff, nonprofit, and she's in Rwanda.
Wow.
I went on to work for the government in intelligence. I had a number of colleagues that went on to work for the U.S. State Department. So it kind of led people into doing more kind of international work.
What did your parents and friends at the time make of you moving out to Russia? Was it a pretty unheard of thing to do? Like, are you the sort of person at that point that was spontaneous that would do these kind of things, or was it still a bit left field for you at that point?
It was pretty normal for me. I'm from a very small town in North Georgia, and I think it was kind of a weird thing for where I was from. However, my mom was a flight attendant for Delta Airlines for 35 years. So I grew up, and my brother and I were homeschooled. So my brother and I grew up traveling all over the place because we had that opportunity with her and the job that she had. So it was pretty normal for me to travel and live all over. Before I lived in Russia, I did an internship with the State Department, and I was in Armenia for a summer, which was awesome. So
Wow.
I'd done a lot of things. Yeah, I'm incredibly fortunate the things that I've been able to do and see, and places I've traveled.
So you came back to the States and you went into work for the United States Defense Forces and in intelligence. Can you talk a bit about that? I'm sure listeners you can and can't say, but like, what's the overall, like, what were you doing?
Yeah, sure. So I did. I was back in '06, and I must have joined them in maybe '07. So it wasn't long after. And I worked for the U.S. Department of Defense. I was a civilian, so I was not uniform military, and I worked in the kind of in the intelligence realm, so the intelligence community. And I got to do some amazing things. I deployed to Afghanistan twice. On my first deployment, that is where I met my now husband. We just celebrated 10 years,
Well,
10-year wedding anniversary. Thank you. And he's British, so
okay.
we had that kind of long distance thing to contend with. But we met in Afghanistan. I did a couple deployments there. I got a lot of amazing trips to a lot of other places, Germany, all over Africa, to do that. But when I was I was in DC, based in DC, and it was like when I was in DC, it was very kind of high level, kind of strategic planning, briefing. I would go to the Pentagon a lot and kind of brief generals and things on stuff that was happening at a high level strategic point of view. When I was deployed overseas, whether it was in Germany or in countries in Africa or in Afghanistan, it was a lot more kind of tactical. So things we would be looking into things that were happening at bad guys and moving things around on a daily basis, and then some of what we were looking into would be actioned by guys in uniform, on a daily basis. So it was a much more fluid tactical thing that was going on.
And then obviously being British, you mentioned your husband is British, so maybe this makes sense to why this happened. I see in your kind of what you've been up to. You then worked at Bournemouth University. Like, where did that come about? How did that come about?
Yeah, so I left my job in the with the Department of Defense to move to the UK. So follow my heart and all those things. So I left the career that I loved, and I had amazing career prospects and career opportunities, and the growth was just phenomenal. But I left that to move to the UK, and I got married and became a military wife, which I'm incredibly proud of, but career progression kind of really took a back seat. And so that was tough. We moved a lot, as you can expect. And I worked at Bournemouth University. It was one of the last kind of 9-to-5 jobs that I had there, doing a number of different roles in a number of different kind of, I didn't teach or anything. I wasn't a lecturer or anything. I just kind of did admin type roles in different divisions of the university.
So your husband was on active duty, I presume?
Yes, he was at the time. He has since retired, but yes, he was active duty.
What's that like as a kind of living with that? How does that work? Is he out for a few months and then back and those sorts of things?
Yeah, and I think it was probably a lot easier for us because I knew exactly what he did and where he was going because I'd been there. So it helped a lot. When we first got together, I deployed and traveled a lot, and he did. So we did a lot of time apart before having kind of time together. And even once I moved to the UK, I mean, I'll never forget. I moved across. I'd left my job that I loved. I moved across under the premise that he was going to be in one job for 2 years, and he was not going to deploy. Sure enough, I land, and I think I'm there for a couple months, and he's like, right, bad news. They're sending me back for I think it was 6 months.
Wow.
So yeah, I know. I was like, great. So yeah, that didn't go down well, but it's just part of the job, and it did help that I knew what he was doing and where he was going to be, and all the people and everything, and we knew what it was like to be away and things like that. So it's just a matter of appreciating as much time as we had together, and knowing that it was just temporary.
I guess given your escapades in Russia and Armenia and then the UK, you must be pretty good at adapting to new surroundings and making new friends and that kind of thing. Does that come naturally to you? You enjoy that kind of thing?
I think it definitely used to. I'm much more of an introvert than I used to be, and it's interesting. And we've literally last night landed back home. We've been gone. We were in New York and back in Georgia seeing family. So I'm kind of getting back, and literally, no lie, we have a Ring camera. And I got up this morning to look at the activity on the Ring camera. We live out in the middle of nowhere. We've got 40 acres, so we're out in the middle of nowhere in Colorado, which we love. And I woke up this morning to look at the Ring camera, and sure enough, 2 mountain lions were wandering through our yard this morning. I was like, oh my gosh, there's mountain lions in our yard. So yeah, so all of that's happening. This just getting back. So I think that I am good. Yes, I can adapt, and I can meet new people and all that. But my happy place is in the middle of nowhere. It is reading a book, or just wandering around our property with my dog, and hopefully not mountain lions. So I can definitely adapt if I need to, but I do love being in the middle of nowhere.
I have to ask you, because I'm an avid reader myself. What do you like to read? Like what kind of things?
So I love everything. I just literally finished 2 books that I loved, and I've just started a new one last night. I read, interesting you said about the Steve Jobs quote. I read the Steve Jobs biography, that Walter Isaacson's book. So good, like shockingly good. I couldn't believe how good it was. I just read that, and then I while reading it and kind of understanding his role in Pixar, I then kind of picked up Bob Iger, who was the CEO of Disney.
The Ride of a Lifetime.
So good. Yes, Ride of a Lifetime. So I just finished the Bob Iger book yesterday, and then started a new one. So, but I mean, to be honest, I love fiction as well. Anything I love. I try to mix between the two, and I'm really enjoying kind of biographies, just having read those too. I really, really enjoyed. So yeah, those are the most recent ones.
Afterwards I can give you some recommendations based on the fact that you like those 2, for sure.
Awesome.
What's the new book you just started?
It's called Buddha and the Badass. Is that right? Did I get that right?
A fiction book?
No. Let me just look at my. Of course, I don't have my Kindle in here. The Buddha and the Badass. Is what it's called. It's kind of probably like a mindset-y type entrepreneurial book.
Okay. Yeah. So then I've got to ask you, because it's also super interesting as to you're in Bournemouth for what, 4 years, is it? Am I right? 4 or 5 years?
Yes. Yeah.
And then was it yourself that wanted to move over back to the States, or both of you, or was it always part of the plan, or it just kind of happened?
It's always part of the plan, really, to come back here. We love the so I'm from Georgia, and I knew the East Coast, DC, but I always loved out west,
Mhm.
Utah, Colorado. Always loved it, and always thought that this is where we would kind of end up. And my husband now has his own business. He runs adventure motorcycle tours, so he's got a handful of big adventure bikes that he takes off road and does like week long tours and things like that. So we're right in the right place for that, with all the national parks and all the kind of amazing stuff to see out here. So we're in a good place for his business, and of course I can work from anywhere. But we always thought that moving to the U.S. would be where we would end up, and his last job with the military was in North Carolina. So we actually did 3 years in North Carolina before then living in an RV for a year and a half and traveling around and ending up where we are now.
So the RV piece is what I was coming on to. So how does that come out? You both just adventurous, thought like, let's do this, why not? Like, is that kind of the attitude, or was there more of a particular reason as to why you did it?
No, it was very, it was always something we kind of joked about. It's like, oh yeah, living in an RV, how cool would that be? But it was like, yeah, but we can't do that. We have to have, real jobs sort of thing. And my business at the time, I was working primarily with clients. So I was kind of running an agency, building websites, doing kind of tech stuff and online presence for small businesses. And so I could do that from anywhere. And that was working and going really well. And so that wasn't stopping us. And I think when he was coming to the end of retiring, he did 21 years service.
Wow.
It was a okay, well, he will get a job. I mean, that was just like it was the thing. Like, you get a mortgage, you get a job, you work 9 to 5. That was just kind of what was known. And he had some prospects kind of over in California, kind of Google and places like that, security type work, and nothing really kind of got him excited. And we kind of said one day, well, why, if he wants to start his own business, then why don't we just sell everything, travel around? We didn't know where we wanted to settle. We thought somewhere between San Diego and Denver. Those were kind of like our 2 reference points, somewhere in there. And come to find out, I'm glad we didn't end up living in California, because taxes on our 2 businesses would just be ridiculous. So I'm glad we didn't end up there. But we are, so we just traveled around and just thought, what the hell, screw it, we'll make our own American dream. And sold everything and bought an RV and just traveled for a year and a half. And we went through where we live now. We went through here a couple times and just loved it, and bought a place, and we've been here for 2.5 years now.
So what's that like, kind of the RV life? What are the pros and cons? I mean, obviously the huge pro is being in a different place and all that sort of stuff, but I imagine living on top of one another is a challenge, right?
Yeah, it was. There were a lot of challenges. We had a great time, but we wouldn't go back to it. We now have a truck with like a rooftop tent on it, because we love to camp and be out in the middle of nowhere. So we take that for our adventures. But I mean, really, it was like moving home. And one of the biggest things that we struggled with was finding a good internet connection, because with my job, I had to have a connection. And we almost felt like we were kind of tied to that. So it wasn't the adventure and the travel that we were doing. And at the time, my business got very busy. I started to shift and get into teaching. So between that and working all the time, it wasn't quite the kind of retirement adventure that you sometimes see on Instagram or anywhere else. It was tough. It was hard at times, and it was not fun at times, and things broke. RVs are very light, so they're made cheaply because they have to be light in weight to be towed or pulled. And things broke all the time. So we had a lot of issues. It was an amazing experience. We found where we live now and love it, but it was hard.
So what was it like? Is it just a natural culmination of things as to why you decided after whatever point in time, year and a half, that enough's enough, we need to find a fixed abode? Or was it something like in your business that happened that led to that? Or was it a bunch of things?
I'll never forget. It was Easter. Gosh, it must have been Easter of 2019. We were in right around Lake Mead, so in the Vegas area, and we were out bicycling, and we just kind of were chatting about it, and it was like, you know what, this isn't really fun anymore, and it's gotten to a point that we're just, we're not loving it that much anymore. It just feels like it's gone on long enough. And we thought, okay, well, we know we want to live in Durango. So we thought, let's start looking. And that was April. And we found this house in May, June. And then we moved in August. So it was a very, very quick transition. We got really lucky with the house that we found. It was just, we both felt the same way, and we hadn't really kind of talked about it in the detail that we had. And it was like, right, we now know, we've made the decision. Let's now start moving in a different direction.
And again, my question, as I find interesting, because I think a lot of people maybe think of this, is that when you decide to sell everything, and what for some people will be quite a drastic move to just go and like do this RV thing with not really much of a plan, did kind of, I suppose your parents, certainly your mum, you talked about, maybe was more open to it because of what she maybe did prior to this, with the airline you mentioned. But how was it kind of keeping in touch with friends? Did they understand? Did they think you're crazy? Like, or did you not really care? Or what was a bunch of those things?
I'd say partly didn't really care. I mean, we'd done, between the two of us, we've done so much traveling that, living in an RV in the US was kind of pretty relatively benign considering a lot of the other stuff we've done. But it really is just kind of is in line with what we'd always done, with all the travel and the adventure and things, that it made sense. It wasn't like a huge surprise. Now, that being said, I know that's not the norm. So I recognize how fortunate we are to have had all these experiences to be able to do something like that. But I think if anyone is thinking about it or wanting to do it, if you have the job that allows it, a lot of people can work remotely now, or if you have your own business and you're able to now, I reckon finding internet is going to be a whole lot easier than it was when we were doing it a couple of years ago. It's one of those experiences that you'll remember forever. And a lot of people, full-time RVers forever, they've been doing it for 10, 20 years. Mm-hmm. So some people never stop, but phenomenal experience.
Was it kind of, you obviously working, he was working as well, right? Sorry if you mentioned that during that period also. So
so he was he was setting up his own business at the time. Yeah.
Right. So kind of with the days kind of taken up with, obviously when you found the internet, kind of you doing your thing, hindering his thing, and then you would break off to do whatever, if you were in a certain area, you might go visit X, Y, and Z, or outdoor type stuff. Is that kind of, forgive me for not knowing, but I don't have a clue.
Yeah. No, for the most part, it was because of the transition I was making in my business. I worked more during that time than I ever have before, and almost trying to do two full-time roles, from keeping the agency side of my business running and setting up this other side that I do now full-time. Mm-hmm. And so because of the business he now does, the adventure motorcycles, he would go off and ride, days at a time. And we tried to get out and adventure as much as possible, national parks that we were nearby. But just because it was a very big RV, we had a tow behind. Moving from one place to another was kind of a whole day thing. You drive 4 hours, 8 hours, however far you were going to the next place. And you had to do a lot of forward planning to make sure that wherever you're going, they had space for you. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot of just logistical planning that went into towing this big house around, because you have to you have to have water and power and somewhere to, dump stations and things. So you could be on your own for a while, but because of the work I was doing, we didn't boondock is the phrase where you just kind of take your RV off in the middle of nowhere. We didn't do that as much as we thought. But yeah, just the limitations with the internet was the biggest issue that we found.
What my last question in the RV, and now we'll move on. But what determined where you would go? Is it just kind of you thought you'd heard this was a nice area, or you would meet people along the road or route who would say, "Hey, you should check this place out"? Like, how do you decide where to go next?
Yeah, it was a bit of both. So and it was right around this time when I started an Instagram account to kind of document our travels. And so I was following other full-time RVers to see where they were going and getting ideas and seeing the sites and what campground or what RV resort or wherever did we need to go. But a lot was also dictated by the rides that my husband wanted to do, because now he rides all over the Western US, from California to Idaho to Colorado and Utah. So we were kind of following, and of course weather. Like right now outside we have a bunch of snow on the ground and it's probably about 20 degrees. So Fahrenheit. So I don't even know what that is, negative something in Celsius.
Something horrible, yeah.
Yeah, it's very cold. So we had to follow the weather. And in an RV, you don't really want to be somewhere where it's freezing for too long. So a lot depended on weather and timing and the rides that he was doing, but also where people recommended and kind of secret spots that you wouldn't, a little bit off the beaten path. So that was kind of how we dictated our travel.
So you've touched upon it in talking about your time with the RV and in this bit in the States as well. What led you from your working for Bournemouth University, albeit not in a academic role, as it were? What led you from there to go, you know what I want to do? I want to teach myself to code. Like, how does that happen?
Completely out of nowhere. I didn't have any formal education in anything kind of techie or anything having to do with code. I've never looked at coding ever before. And I was in one of the 9-to-5s, my last 9-to-5 at Bournemouth University. And my boss walks in one day and he says, I want our website to have this new functionality. And he asks me to do it. I have no idea. I know what he's referring to, but I have no idea how to do it. Mm-hmm. So I Google it. And I find this, after a bit of research, I find this line of code and I put that into the back end of the website and it works. And that moment was like that aha, that magical moment where I thought to myself, if I've just figured this thing out just by Googling and doing a bit of research, and it works, like if I learn more of that, is that my ticket to being able to find a remote job? I mean, I always thought that I would have a real job, that I would have an employer, that that was just it. Being an entrepreneur was never something that was on my radar. Mm-hmm. And it was completely random. And I came across that and I got a kick out of it. And I learned a ton. There's so many free online resources to learn how to code. And it took me forever to learn a lot. I didn't have other people that I was kind of learning with. I didn't have a community. I was really just kind of going at it blind and trying things. I was terrified to ask any questions because people can be really mean. So it was just years of trying and playing around and having zero confidence in myself and not putting myself out there. And then just, I applied for a ton of remote jobs. Nothing, didn't get anything, no interest whatsoever.
In coding or in general? Mm-hmm. Coding?
No, in coding. So I really wanted to do, building websites, coding, anything. I really liked the problem solving and the troubleshooting that came along with learning to code. Like there's so much more to it than just the, typing out code. It's figuring things out and Googling stuff and watching YouTube videos and trying things and breaking things, fixing it. And I loved that. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't find any, no one would hire me. I didn't have a degree. I didn't have 10 years experience. I didn't have all these, I knew how to do what they wanted, but I didn't have the experience or the background of the degree. So it was very disheartening to kind of realize that after spending so long becoming self-taught. And it was a friend, a colleague of my husband's who retired from the military. He started his own business, and he said, well, why don't you build me a website? Why don't you do that why don't you start your own business building websites? I was like, that's not a real thing. I was very against.
What year was this though?
Let's see, that would have been 2016.
Okay.
2016, 2017 is when I really fought it. I didn't want to do that. I wanted a real job because that's all I knew. And I went for it. I built his website. He loved it. And he finally kind of said, why don't you do this for more small businesses? And that's kind of what got me into it.
So first question is, that piece of code for Bournemouth University, what was it actually to do?
Sure. So if you're on a website and you see like an FAQ section where it's kind of an accordion, you click the plus and something comes up underneath it. Mm-hmm. It is that functionality. That's what he asked for, and I had no idea how to achieve it.
Okay, but were you in that? You must have somehow been within the computer world if he was asking you to do something, right? Even loosely. No.
No, I know that's like where it's so
weird.
Bizarre. It's like, why in the world? And my colleague was sat next to me, and he did have a computer background, mm-hmm. but for some reason my boss asked me, and I kind of look at my colleague wide-eyed, and he's like, no, don't worry, we'll figure it out. And between Google and him kind of showing me a few things, we figured it out. But and it wasn't like nowadays you have like drag and drop builders where you just kind of say, I want an accordion here. It wasn't that at all. It was it was completely coded, and I had to find, I'm sure it was HTML and some CSS, but at the time I didn't know what that was. So it was just copy it and paste it and try and understand what it was, the divs and put the heading in here and all that. So I had no idea what I was doing at the time.
So what I find interesting is you go and you fix this problem, and you have this moment where you go, oh, this is pretty interesting. But you say prior to that, you thought you'd be a 9-to-5 working for someone. So did you, when you said also that it was like your ticket to remote working, so how do those two things compute? Did you always want to be a remote worker working for someone else, but you didn't conceive that being possible to be your own business? Was that kind of what it was?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So because of the job that my husband was still in, and we had no idea when he was going to retire, I really wanted a job that was location independent, because we were very dependent on his job, and that was very location specific. So I wanted career progression back, like what I had when I was with the military. So I was looking for a job that I could do that would have career progression, but that I could do from anywhere. So I was looking for a remote job.
So it was almost the dislike of the location dependence of your husband's role that led you to go, I want the total opposite of that.
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
Right. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So then you do this piece of code for Bournemouth University, and you go, right, this is my ticket to location independence. Brilliant. How long are you persevering with? I mean, are you doing this like at night time or in your free time, just kind of Googling around, learning from, all the free online tools available, all that sort of stuff? Like, how long is that period of time before your husband's friend says to you, hey, why don't you try building my website?
Yeah, years. So let's see, this would have been, it was probably late 2014, early 2015 when I first came across the code. And then it was 16, 17. There's easily a 2, if not more, year gap. I'd have to kind of go back and figure it out exactly.
But at that period of time, you're still in Bournemouth, are you? During all that period? No.
Part of that, I was still there, and then we moved to the US somewhere in there, and I was kind of doing part-time stuff. And yes. So, but the last kind of full-time job that I had was at Bournemouth.
So you didn't have the confidence necessarily in your own ability until your husband's friend just kind of egged you on, I suppose, a bit to say, hey, like, why don't you try this out? And at this point, you've been for 2 years learning. I mean, have you been experimenting and tinkering? Is that what you were doing, like your own stuff? But it was all kind of like in the background that no one saw, but just for your own, own benefit. But you thought something that would bear fruits. That was the whole plan. That at some point, all that learning, or was it more, this is super interesting, like, or was it a bit of both of those things?
Oh no, it was totally, it was interesting, but it was much more like, it was like 80-20, much more. I wanted to learn it, to bear fruit, to be able to work and have an income and have career progression in some sort of kind of tech type role. What that was, I didn't know. And it was weekends, it was evenings, whenever I had the opportunity to learn. And I took a very interesting perspective to it, where like nowadays there are every kind of drag and drop builder you can imagine, from whether it's whatever website building platform it is. But I think because I was so uncomfortable with my experience and lack of experience and lack of a degree and all that I wanted to prove to myself that I could do it the hard way. So I was learning how to kind of code websites from scratch, because if I learned the really hard way and kind of how everything fit together, then I wouldn't be caught. Like, someone wouldn't say to me, oh, you don't know how to do that. Well, then, you're not a real whatever.
Yeah.
Which is terrifying, and did happen a couple times. So I very much took the view that I'm going to learn this, and I'm going to be really, really good at it, and then maybe someone will hire me, or and then maybe no one will question my skills and my abilities.
And for people to understand, like, how many hours a week were you putting in, on average, do you reckon, when you were learning?
Oh gosh. When I first started, not loads, maybe a few hours a week. It wasn't much at all. And then it just built from that, and it was really enjoyable. And when it was more kind of, when I was doing kind of part-time work, I had a lot more time. So then easily, let's see, if I did maybe 20-30 hours a month sort of thing. So significantly more. It was never I was never actually, there were times when I would work 24 hours. I would have an issue that I couldn't figure it out, and I would just like go for it, and that was my only focus. But it really depended on the time that I had and what I was enjoying, and
it's
that
pretty,
sort of thing.
pretty interesting to me, the mentality of persevering with no real goal in mind, but to be good at something, to then obviously have the goal being obviously the location independence for sure, but no actual, like, after 3 years I'll have a degree or whatever it might be. I think that's really interesting to understand that, like, often, like, the best learning is done where you're just passionate about what it is, and there is no time scale for that. And naturally, as I'm sure we talked about, reading books, etc., like, the minute, I've always thought this, the minute you stop learning things, like, you're just diminishing, you're just kind of on a decline. The minute you stop the minute you sit back and you think, I know everything in this field or this area, like, that's the minute that you need to really look yourself in the mirror and go, what am I doing right now? Probably in the wrong or not challenging yourself enough.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's one thing that I love that I get to do now is, I've built the business, and now I've built a team, and I don't code anymore. I love it, but that's not what I need to be doing. I need to be growing the business and networking and meeting people and, forming partnerships and all that kind of visionary high level stuff, which is challenging. It's learning. And that's why I loved the Steve Jobs book and the Bob Iger book. And I mean, even just finishing Bob Iger's book last night, and he finishes, basically saying exactly what you did, that you got to look yourself in the mirror, and you are still you. It doesn't matter how many people say to you how awesome you are, how, oh wow, you're the CEO of Disney or all this. Like, you gotta stay grounded and keep learning, all the things that you don't know, either get other people to do those things for you, or learn as much you can. So I surround myself with people who know how to do things better than I do, from people on my team to I've got multiple coaches who kind of help me out with business. So I have learned very quickly that I am better at what I do and at growing the business and building the team and building my community when I surround myself with people who are experts at all those things.
So we have to come to the meat of what I want to talk about, which is the Geek Pack, right? Which is your current business. So how do we go from I'm learning this coding thing, my husband's friend says to me, let's build a website for myself. You build the website. Were you confident in your ability, or did you think I still don't know enough to build this website? Or you just, what was it that kind of made you take the leap? Was it just him insisting on you doing it? Was that all it was?
It was, yeah. So a lot of credit to him for pushing me to give it a go. And then I always struggled with kind of confidence and imposter syndrome. I mean, that's still something that I struggle with now, and I think I will continue to, and that's okay. You
that's interesting.
To grow, and
you when I was talking to you before about like your friends and family and of the various things you've done, you don't have any issue with doing things slightly against the grain and that kind of stuff. But actually, in your business sense, you have that that part of your psyche. It's interesting.
Oh yeah. The imposter syndrome is real, and I accept that, and I also think it keeps me a bit kind of humble and grounded, because that's just something that I'll always have in the back of my head, and that's okay, and I'll grow and learn and hire people to do things that maybe I'm it's not my area of expertise. But
it's like yes. How you use that that angst or that feeling to your benefit, rather than to kind of to freeze you into inactivity, I suppose.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I see that all the time, because it can absolutely just freeze you. And I really struggled with being a perfectionist, and it worked well when I was building websites and coding and things. But the inaction was real. I mean, it took me years to start the business, to grow the agency. And I'm a recovering perfectionist, but I still like things to be done very well. But I'm also comfortable taking imperfect action, because my business would not be what it is if I didn't take imperfect action. All those things. So I try very hard not to use the word mistakes. I have learned a lot of lessons in the years when I've been doing this, and I try to, every lesson that I learn, I try to document and pass on to my community, because I don't want them to kind of do the same thing that I did. So very, very few mistakes, but a lot of lessons.
Two interesting points actually. So one of them is the adage, which is what took you to the point, so what was useful and beneficial to you, this perfectionist mentality of building the websites and that part of your business. Often you got to forget that to be able to get to the next level. Like, people think that what's got them to point A, so say it's weight loss, maybe as a different descriptor. What got you to lose the first 10 kilograms might not get you to the next 10 kilograms. You might need to look at it like small tweaks or whatever else. And similarly in business or anything, like just because something got you to point A does not necessarily equate to that's going to put you to point B by just working harder or doing or whatever. I think people need to kind of remember that. And then the second thing, and it's a book I will recommend to you, is the new Will Smith autobiography, which is very, very interesting. Yeah, definitely worth reading. I'm kind of 130 or 40 pages in. One of the things he said about lessons he was talking about, someone told him this, I'm not sure where it came from, but it was that in school, life's like school, except for in school, you learn lessons and then you take a test. That's how school works. But life's the total opposite in respects you take the test and then you learn the lessons. And that's basically what you're saying there. And it's absolutely true. And it comes back to that activity be inactivity, because a lot of people are waiting for the right time, whatever it might be, whether they invest in the property market or stocks and shares or lose the weight or whatever it might be. And like the truth is, as we all know, like there is no right time. Like, yeah, there's maybe some points where things are aligned better for you or worse for you, but realistically, like the action, whether it comes a positive or negative, like that's the thing that's gonna take you on. And of course the lessons you learn and the quote unquote failures, again, that's a word I don't like either, but like those are the things that actually you learn from. And I often find reading these autobiographies actually myself that a lot of the time, like these successful people, I call it backfill, like they don't really know. Like I've read so many of them, like take McDonald's with Ray Kroc, like he'll go from like talking about having 10 sites to 100 to 1,000. You're like, whoa, there's a huge difference between 10 and 100, and then even obviously bigger between 10 and 100 and 1,000. Like I think sometimes people are so in deep in what they're doing, they don't know why they were successful. But I think it's often easier and more, you can learn more from actually why something didn't work than necessarily why it did, because there's so many competing factors: timing, luck, the team. I mean, I saw something about someone was on a YouTube video about TED Talk about why startups are successful and why some fail. And there was a few factors, and this guy was like a venture capitalist, I think. And basically the factors being, investment raise, or fundraising rather, the team, the idea itself, the timing, and I think there's something else, I can't remember what it was, but he basically thought that the biggest thing is timing. Like often, you have a great idea, wrong timing, or great team, great idea. Like the timing thing is a big piece. So bit of a tangent from me, but that's just something I think about often as well. So yeah, you built this website. How long does this website take you to build the first one?
Oh gosh, I probably redid it so many times because I was so nervous.
What was it for? What was the business?
A drone business.
Okay, interesting.
So he was starting a drone business.
E-commerce selling drones?
No, offering it as a service.
Okay, fine.
Yeah. Probably all in a month or two, if I remember correctly. But yeah, longer than it needed to be. But I did. I was changing things, going back and forth, and all that. So yeah, a long time.
Did you charge for this, or was something you did like no charge?
I did. I charged for it. And while I was doing his, I reached out to a couple of nonprofits locally and family that I knew, and built a couple nonprofit sites free of charge. So I kind of had those few projects all there in a similar time frame.
Was that just to learn more, the nonprofit?
It was. Yeah,
that's absolutely so smart.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I tell my students all the time is if you don't kind of know someone that needs a website, or if you aren't quite comfortable kind of charging for something yet, if you're going to do anything pro bono, do it for a nonprofit. And we actually have a program called Geek Pack Match, where nonprofits apply to then go into a pool where my new students can build a website for them. So they get a relatively basic website for nothing, and my student gets the experience and testimonial and things like that, because it was so big for me to help me get started. And it's win-win. Helping out a nonprofit is awesome, and if they don't have a budget for a website, but they need an online presence, we've kind of set that up to help that.
So am I right in thinking lineage wise, you just went from one website and then you started to get kind of referrals, and you reached out a bit and you kind of started doing more and more websites yourself? That's how it first started?
Yeah, and it was slow. It definitely started slow. I did those, but those were people that I knew, and it was kind of, okay, well, how do I kind of branch out from there? And I was terrible at marketing myself, really, really uncomfortable. And I don't know many people that love it. So I think that's normal. And I I was looking for even hourly work, just to kind of do, just tech stuff on the side, maintaining, updating, fixing, all that sort of stuff, in addition to the website projects. And my first ever like real hourly job, being contracted as a developer, I had no idea, I was just so excited, I had no idea what to charge. And I remember I just said, okay, well, what about $20 an hour? Which I think back now, I'm like, wow, there's nowhere near enough. But you got to start somewhere. So started out $20 an hour with this woman as her developer. And in less than 6 months later, I started getting referrals and more work. I was at $75 an hour. So in a very short period of time, I almost quadrupled my hourly rate. And that was solely because I knew how to code. I knew the back end of websites really well. I could fix pretty much any issue that was kind of presented to me. I could fix just because I learned to code. And as I said before, I kind of learned the hard way. And that's one thing that I do with my students that is very different from anyone else that kind of teaches websites. Is I teach the hard way. I want you to learn the ins and outs, because then you can say yes to anything. It doesn't matter how complex or easy it is. You can figure it out if you kind of know the ins and outs.
So over a period of time, you start building up this kind of portfolio of work. How does that then lead to what you're doing now, which is Geekpack, which you can describe in more detail, but from what I understand is empowering others to do what you've done in respect of learning to code and all the opportunities that lie within.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So I kind of build websites and have an agency, and getting more referrals and things like that. And that's all going great. I really enjoy it. But
you had a team or just you at this point? Sorry.
It was me, and I had a couple others that were working kind of contract wise. So it was primarily just me. So it was busy, but had some other folks helping out. And then this is right about the time when we decided to go full time in an RV. And I set up an Instagram account, and we're traveling, and people are saying to me, how are you able to travel full time? Like, are you independently wealthy? Are your parents paying for it? Like all these things. And so no, I run my own business. I taught myself how to code, how to build websites. And now I run my business from the RV, and I just work with clients and build websites and, do tech stuff. Mm-hmm. And to my amazement, people said, I want to learn how to do that. So I thought, okay, well, cool. I can put something together, because my entire kind of learning progression was very mixed up and all over the place. And so I thought to myself, well, if I'm going to create something to show other people how to do it, I don't know how to teach. I've never done that before. And I thought, well, all I know how to do is to teach it the way that I wish I'd been taught. Okay. That's all I knew how to do. So I did that. I created a free 5-day coding challenge is what I called it. And just teaching the basics of HTML and CSS, kind of the building blocks of a website, just real basic, starting absolutely from nothing. Like, just like me, I wanted there to be something where if you've never ever done this before, if you've never considered yourself techie, that you could get started with this. And it was the way that I wish I'd learned, kind of building up to a project sort of thing that you could show off. And I did that, and people loved it, and they wanted to learn more. So I then created a bigger kind of program that just went into it in a lot more detail. And then that's, and the reason that Geekpack came around is actually my husband's idea, the name Geekpack, and a lot of it has to do with my dog. I've got a chocolate lab named Blue, and I always liked the pack mentality of that, and that's what I wanted. I wanted to build a community where primarily women. My audience is primarily women. We do have a handful of amazing guys that run the program, but we definitely kind of market primarily to women.
Any reason for that?
I think it's just naturally kind of happened that way. Okay. But also when I was learning, I would join like Facebook groups or communities where people were really, really mean. And it wasn't always the guys. Now, sure, there's a lot of nasty women out there as well. I know that, and I experienced it. But there's something as a female, when you're learning a skill that is predominantly men, and you're learning a skill and you don't have a college degree and you don't have the experience, it's very, very intimidating. It's very scary to ask questions. It's, all those things. It's just, I think women just feel that a lot more. So, and I can only say that because I'm a woman and I felt it. So, but as I said, we've got a lot of amazing guys in the community. But that for me was the biggest thing, is I wanted to create a community where mean people were not allowed, where you could ask any question and no one would give you a hard time. You could, didn't matter where you were on your journey. Like, we all started somewhere. And I wanted, it took me years. I wanted to reduce that down to months for my students so that they could learn a skill, they could ask questions, they could have good days, they could have bad days, they could share it with us, and we would be there for them. We would empower them, support them, all those things. And it's all done in a Facebook group, and it is, over 2,500 strong. And I, just the other day, I had actually a guy in the UK who's been in the program for years from the beginning. He reached out and he just said, I was in another community, in another Facebook group, and someone was really nasty and it got negative. And he just wanted to come in and say, thanks for this one, because that is just not allowed. That's not the type of people that we attract. We support each other, we empower each other, we encourage each other. And we build each other up, and we kind of, answer questions, and it's like tech support with a heart, a big heart. That is kind of what the community is.
So how long is the average program, or does it differ depending on how competent someone is?
Yeah, right now it is completely self-paced. We're looking at kind of revamping it to figure out a little bit more of a detailed kind of timeline. But right now it's completely self-paced. I have some students that go through it in a month or two, and then others that, a year plus. So it really depends on how much time you have to commit to it. And then we have different learning paths depending on, do you want to learn skills first, or do you need money yesterday? We have, depending on financial situation and things like that. But the aim is to, whether someone has worked with websites or coding before, they've never done anything, it is an opportunity to learn a real tangible skill that you can put on a resume. Hard skill in the sense that it's doable. It's not hard to learn. It is a hard skill, like, versus a soft skill, if that makes sense. They can learn it, they can offer it as a service, and they can potentially start their own business to be able to work from home or work from anywhere, travel, be home with their kids, whatever their personal circumstances require. It gives them an option. And, websites are, there are so many new websites going up, and whether it's building websites or just doing anything kind of tech related, it's a really fantastic way to get into the online business space with a real kind of tangible skill that you can charge a lot of money for.
So take myself as an example. I have no technical knowledge in terms of coding. I understand technology, but I don't understand coding, right? And I come to you and I say, right, I want to learn, the basics to be able to be do a chargeable developer, for want of a better phrase. What's the kind of average cost that I'm going to, pay for your course? Like, again, if I can dedicate full time and I'm got a reasonable aptitude, is it 2-3 months, as you said before? Is that kind of roughly where people are, or some, 6 months, or just as a guide for other people?
Yeah, so I would say 2 to 3 months is probably fair. Right now, my program is $500, and I have students who, get that investment back within days, weeks,
For sure.
30 days. That's one of the things that we try very hard is to say, this is an investment in yourself, but we want you to get that investment back as soon as possible, and then more. So I would say on average, it's probably 2 to 3 months for getting through the content. But we do want people to, because like learning the skills is the easy part. Putting yourself out there, marketing yourself, finding clients, that's the hard part. So it's very easy for someone to say, to join and want to learn the skills because that's easy and comfortable. You can do it behind a screen. But the part that everyone's there for is to build a business and to make money at the end of the day, to leave a job, to work from home, whatever it is. So we want people to start marketing themselves as quickly, and that's a whole component of the course. It isn't just the skills; it's the finding clients aspect as well, and the community.
So you had 25,000 people that have gone through your program, is that correct?
2,500.
100.
Yeah.
I read 25,000 somewhere as the number. What's that number referring to?
Gosh,
like a community or something, or what's that?
Oh no, sorry. So that's our overall kind of number of primarily women and girls. We have a kids coding program that we have reached over the years. So that's like an all-encompassing from my email list to my my free Facebook group and my paid community and students and kids code camp and other kind of periphery products that I have.
Makes sense. So my next kind of question, I guess, is you mentioned about people once they've gone on that course, like how do you advise people to pick up their first few clients? I mean, this is obviously transferable to almost any industry, but what do you recommend? You're obviously being through it yourself. How do you kind of help your students actually, return on their investment, I suppose?
Yeah, talking to people, whether that is virtually or in person. We're now kind of getting, well, maybe not with COVID, but really getting out and talking to people, family members. We're in the later this week. We're holding a 2-hour workshop, really kind of helping people come up with their quote unquote elevator pitch that they can use around the Christmas table, or when they go into their local coffee shop. Because it's a very natural conversation that can be had without being super salesy. So really it's just kind of just saying, this is what I do. This is what I'm learning. Do you know anyone, sort of thing. The amount of times people say, oh, I mean, these shelves are a great example. I went into a couple local, this is Aspen, so local to where we live. And I went into some local kind of businesses and said, I want some shelves to go on the wall behind my computer. I work from home and I, shelf things like that. And I said, oh, what do you do? Just the natural conversation of me saying I work from home led into me saying what I do. And both business owners said, I need a new website. Can you do it? Or do you know someone? So there are very natural ways to start a conversation. And then of course, there's a lot of stuff that you can do on social media, in Facebook groups, in your local community, joining organizations, and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of different ways to go about it. But really, at the end of the day, just getting out there and in a natural way, talking about what you do.
It's interesting actually, because I also do something, I've not done it for a long while, but I do it called burning issues, where like I'll spend like 5-10 minutes just like something I might have thought of during the week or whatever, like I might have read something that's like triggered a thought process or whatever, that often it's more for my own benefit, but like if someone again finds it useful, like with these things, then great. And this morning actually I was thinking about something which I was talking to a friend that I do all the time, but for him it was like, wow, that's so out there and crazy, but it's similar to what you're talking about, which is I might read, there's a newspaper in the UK called the Sunday Times, and there was an article, it's quite interesting actually, there's a lady who is doing TikToks, but she's doing them about Microsoft Excel. So she's like got this kind of clever, have you seen this?
Yes. Yeah.
Right. So I thought that was super interesting. Apparently she's doing some crazy 6-figure, like stupid money. And so that's super interesting. So like, for me, I'm just interested in talking to that person, bringing her onto a podcast like this. So I literally would reach out to her email, which you can find on her TikTok, and then her LinkedIn is available, right? So like it's very easy nowadays to actually get hold of people and just be very upfront as to, hey, here's what I'm, looking to do, or like, could you help me with this, that, and the other. And I think just being pretty direct and it's more of an American thing. British people are by their nature, like they don't like saying what they're there for, as I'm very much like, look, I want to interview, I think you're interesting, or, whatever it may be. I mean, I built a board for my business of full of like ridiculous people that you would be like, how, like, surely your parents do this, but like, no, like I literally just reached out and I just spent the time, and slowly you end up kind of honing your pitch, quote unquote, and you get more comfortable talking to different people, and as you say, you're just saying what you do, and all of a sudden someone goes, the right people anyway, I find, will go, oh, you know what, like I know X, Y, and Z, like I'll put you in touch, and eventually, but you have to kiss a lot of frogs to find the right people, right? It's you got to be prepared for the kind of the perseverance, being knocked down, and people going, who needs that, or whatever. So how many people is in the team, if you don't mind me asking, of your business?
Right now there's 6 of us, and we are doing a slight kind of reorg. We've got new stuff coming up next year that we're excited about. So kind of shifting some things around, and I believe we will go up to 7, if not 8, nice. At some point next year.
And they're I guess located anywhere around
all over the world. We've got Australia, Canada, the UK. Couple folks here in the US, and looks like I just spoke to someone this morning in Brazil that we'll probably bring on. So all over the world.
It's amazing. I guess you've never met these people, right? Or maybe you have met a few of them.
I've only met, so my COO is my stepdaughter, and she is in the UK. So I've obviously met her, but no, I've not met any of the others in person.
Wow, it's amazing nowadays. You can have a business where you haven't met. Same with my board. I've met one of, soon to be 6, one of 6. The rest has just been over Zoom and such like, which again shows you what you can do with just kind of a laptop with a webcam, I guess, really. So there's some other interesting stuff that I came across. So I was looking at your kind of social media and different things, and a couple of things kind of came to mind. We touched on this before. You talked about kind of originally you charged $20 an hour, then you went to 75. For people, again, this is transferable to any industry, predominantly the service industry. Like, how do you know what to charge? How do you make sure you're getting a fair price for what you're doing, but also, not outprice yourself in the market? I mean, one of the things, my little add in here, is that I've thought about. I'm very interested in the luxury watch market, and so, for example, repairing of watches is a good example where, it might not take someone super long to do the job. And people have this perception that the time spent doing the job equates to how much that should be charged for. Now, you might come onto this yourself, but my view has changed over time. And I've started to realize, actually, the reason that person can do that job in 5 minutes is because they spent 10 years learning that.
Yep.
You're paying for the 10 years of learning that within 5 minutes versus someone having no clue, spending all this time, and like, maybe it's cheaper, but they might not fix it properly, or they might cause another thing an issue, or so on and so forth. But I'll leave it to you. I had to add that. Sorry.
Yes, no, 100%. I agree with that, and and it's hard. I mean, pricing is probably the question that we get asked about the most, and there's so many personal things that go into it to pricing. And the thing is anyone out there listening or watching this, you're going to get it wrong. So, just know that you'll undercharge, you'll overcharge, you'll question yourself, you'll wish that you'd done something different. That's going to happen, just period. So just know that. And again, it's lessons learned. Well, did you undercharge? Okay, well, how much should you have charged? And a lot of it will be time tracking. If you think that a project will take X amount of time, and then all of a sudden it's double that, well, just know that for next time, just learn from it. And when you get to the end of a project, do you feel that you got good, you got paid well for what you did? No? Okay, charge more next time. And there will be, once you start doing it, there will be a natural kind of point where you've kind of hit a limit at the thing that you can offer that people are willing to pay for. Well, then if you want to charge more, learn more skills, offer more things, add in digital marketing, add in strategy, add in, there's a lot of other things that could be added in to increase that overall price. But, at the end of the day, you just got to start somewhere, and not doing anything is that inaction that we talked about that you don't want to do. So, if it's $500 for a website, or $2,000 for a website, or $5,000, whatever that amount. If it's $20 an hour, $10 an hour, $50 an hour, just start somewhere and then just see how it goes, and then adjust as you figure things out.
A couple of things that I found before I kind of wrap up the conversation. Even though there's so many more things I want to ask you, so maybe we'll do another one at some point. I also saw you have on your website this piece about, I guess it's like something you offer out kind of as a flavor of what you do, which is the things to ask in the discovery call, right? The 148
Yes.
questions to ask, which again is super transferable to anyone really. I mean, I'm pretty sure what I'm going to expect you to say, but I'm interested to see what, in your own words, like how do you what format and what structure do you use, or what kind of techniques to, again, in any circumstance, to almost scope out what it is that's expected of you from, it could be a colleague, or it could be an agency, or whatever, like what's your advice for that?
Gosh, every single project is different. And at least every project that I worked on was different. And you can have a kind of streamlined system for asking questions and trying to get as much detail as possible. But being flexible and knowing that, the hosting company that they use, or the email or whatever, like things will be thrown in that will be different, and just being flexible. And it all goes back to like the thing that I said in the beginning about learning the hard way, and learning things, because then regardless of what is asked of you, you can see the full picture and you can do all the things. And you also might pick up other aspects as well that they might need. I mean, if someone says they need a website, well, there's a good chance they probably need a lot more than that. They need a website, and they probably need a social media strategy. They probably need an email marketing strategy. They probably need, newsletters, or just, email, right? Like it's not just a website anymore. And I am the first to kind of say this: websites are really, really important, but it's not it. Getting on Google, having a blog, a YouTube channel. Like nowadays there's so much noise in the online space that if you're going to offer something as a service, offering something, but knowing that you can add on from there. Google Analytics, being able to look at data. There's so many other places it can go. But yeah, that the reference that you made to the discovery call document that we have, 148 questions, that's totally transferable. And that's just kind of on the surface. Once you start having a conversation with a potential client, that's when you kind of get into the nitty gritty of what is it they actually need. Do they need branding? Do they need a logo? Do they, there's so much that goes into every project being different.
I'll say I've got a lot more things I want to ask you, but I think that a good way to close is, again, take me as an example. I've watched this or listened to this, and I'm really interested in going forward and trying to figure out if coding's for me, right? Apart from, of course, which would be great, go onto your course and that. What's the kind of the low-hanging fruit? How does someone like kind of figure out like what's the best free online kind of entry level, like let's figure out if this is for me? Like, is it, I forget what the names are, I've looked at them before myself, but is there something you would recommend, or a couple of websites you'd recommend straight away to go like, give this a go, a couple of weeks, see how you go, or like, how do you,
Yeah, so that if someone is kind of thinking, oh, coding sounds kind of cool, I want to give it a go, that's absolutely why I created the free 5-day coding challenge.
Right.
And it's on my website. If you go to geekpack.co, it's on there to sign up for that. And over 5 days, you start from literally nothing, never having done it before, to building a 2-page website entirely from scratch using HTML and CSS. Nice. Over those 5 days. And that, if you go through that and you're like, oh my gosh, like I get such a kick out of this, and I figured it out and I did it, and I have those reactions, then that is where I would then say, okay, you want to learn more, whether it's my program or there's so many others out there. There's a lot of free resources out there. I mean, I'm super cheap, and I did all the free resources I could, and never invested in anything. It also took me multiple years to figure it out. So, there's a lot of different ways to go. But starting there, if you get a kick out of that, then that's where you would then want to spend more time with other resources or a paid program and the things that come along with that.
I think that's a really good place to leave the chat today. I think it's been super interesting. Hope we've had a good time also.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
I have a bunch of questions, but I think it probably ask you them privately, and maybe it'll be another podcast about other stuff, like more in depth as to the future of like where tech's going, if you're heading into the mobile app space or anytime soon with the coding or all those sorts of things that I'm interested in. But I think for right now, like, that's a really great place, and thank you very much for your time. And I'm sure people will find something of value in your really interesting and inspiring story.
Oh, I hope so. Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks so much.